Good morning. Welcome to our Thursday live devotion time, a little later than usual. If you're watching live, please comment so we'll know you were here. And feel free to comment on what you think as we move along this morning. If you're watching later on Facebook or YouTube, you are welcome and we're glad you're here too. Well, I've had this business of filing our tax return on my mind lately. It's not so much paying the taxes that bothers me. I feel like that's unavoidable, and I've long since gotten over believing that the money is mine anyway. What bugs me is the time and energy it takes to get everything together to file our tax return. It was nice having an extension this year, but that just allowed me to put off the inescapable, hated chore of sorting receipts, making sure they match the reports from our home accounting software, and since they never do match on the first attempt, doing it over and over again until they do, once I figured out where my mistake is and I can get it right. Then I take the piles of paper to our accountant. His name is Ed Alexander, and he's a great guy. I have often thanked God that his last name starts with A. When we moved to Lebanon County over 20 years ago, I looked in the Chamber of Commerce directory for someone to help us with our taxes, and he was the first one listed, Alexander. Ed makes all this tax business seem bearable by his kindness and his ability to engage in conversation about baseball, basset hounds, and local places to get the best crab cakes, all while adding long columns of numbers and entering information on his computer. When I became a pastor, he made it his business to learn all about tax laws that cover ministers. He doesn't make assumptions. Oh, and did I mention he's actually retired and he still does tax season for fun and frolic? I didn't say he was normal, did I? I jest. He's of perfectly sound mind. He's just a really good guy who does what he does well, to be good to people, to be helpful to people. And yes, taking care of our taxes this year is another thing that doesn't seem quite right. No personal visit with Ed and his lovely, sweet, kind wife, Jane, either. Some people take issue with what the government spends their tax dollars for, but that would be something to muse about on another day. So the money and where it goes aside, my issue is about giving Caesar the time and energy it takes to pull it all together so I can tell him what I owe him. I love my job and my Jesus, so most of my time goes to the church and to his work. I love Bob and our kids and grandkids, so I try to spend as much time with them as possible. I try to sew because I like that and do crafty things, so a good deal of whatever spare time I have goes to that. Spare time. Right. I love my family and friends, so I spend as much time as I can with them, or I did before quarantine. Ideally, I would never spend any time doing anything but God things. Church, family, friends, and fun. But I do have other responsibilities. I occasionally have to get my oil changed, go to the dentist, and sometimes clean the house and do laundry. I also have to pay my taxes. So I give a good deal of time every March, or May, as in this year's case, to getting my tax data together, driving it to Lebanon, visiting with Ed, and driving back again to pick up the final papers, sign them, and pay Uncle Sam what we owe. I usually let it go till the last minute because gathering it together, as I've said, is a chore that I dread. I would have waited longer this year too, but Ed says he doesn't want to be doing this all summer long, so get it to me, Misty. He was nicer about it than that. I know it's what I have to do, but it tends to interfere with what I really should do as a Christian, which is spend time with God and his people, notwithstanding the fact that Ed and Jane are two of his delightful people, of course. Sometimes what we should do has to take a back seat to what we have to do. Let's look at Matthew 22, starting at verse 15. Then the Pharisees went out and laid plans to trap Jesus in his words. They sent their disciples to him along with the Herodians. Teacher, they said, we know that you are a man of integrity and that you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. You aren't swayed by others because you pay no attention to who they are. Tell us then, what is your opinion? Is it right to pay the imperial tax to Caesar or not?" But Jesus, knowing their evil intent, said, "You hypocrites, why are you trying to trap me? Show me the coin used for paying the tax." They brought him a denarius, and he asked them, "Whose image is on this? And whose inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Then he said to them, "So give back to Caesar what is Caesar's, and to God what is God's." When they heard this, they were amazed. So they left him and went away. See, Jesus' enemies tried to force him to make a choice between the ideal of giving all we have and all we are to God, and the other side of the coin, so to speak, which is the requirements of human law. But his answer forced them to examine their own priorities when he said, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar, and to God what is God's." In other words, live the ideal life for God to the best of your ability, but do live in the real world. The decisions we make should be about applying our ideal life with God to the real world, not about thumbing our noses at the rest of the world because we as Christians think we are above or somehow beyond it. Jesus took a position in the middle that tells us we live in this reality, a world where most people don't base their decisions on God. We are occasionally going to have to bow to worldly authorities to get by in this world, but we must keep our focus where it belongs, on God things. And you know what? We can choose to do God things even while we submit to the real world. I enjoy the time I get to spend with Ed, whose last name starts with A. I remember the fellowship I got to share with God's people, with the people of God's family, as I sort through lunch and breakfast receipts for my tax return. And I do that job itself in a room where I can enjoy Bob's company. I often talk to my mom or other people that I love on my hands-free phone when I'm taking longer drives, such as the one to Lebanon County. The things of God are not necessarily mutually exclusive from the requirements of this real world we live in. Can you think of a requirement of this world that you have to meet, but manage to do some of the things of God while getting it done? If so, would you say something about that in the comments? What do you do for God while doing the things that you are obliged to do? I can think of one that applies to our quarantine situation. We are forced to stay at home for the time being, and some of us are getting a little antsy about that, aren't we? I understand. You want to get back to your businesses. You want to make a living again. You want to open things up. And maybe some of you just want to get back to normal as soon as possible. So you've come to believe that this pandemic is something less than it is. I do understand. But if you're planning to get back out there, do it with good sense, will you? Wear a mask. Wash your hands. Stand apart from others. Be a part of the solution. Flatten the curve of the second wave before we are told we have to. If you're strong and healthy, great, but loving your neighbor doesn't mean risking his or her life. Wear the mask to protect those who are the most susceptible, not just to protect you. You're meeting your need to get out in this world while doing the work of God. And let's just name it. Being prudent about getting back together still beats paying taxes. What? What? I think I actually heard some of you say amen to that, didn't I? Well, I know we all got an extension to file, but if you haven't filed your tax return yet, you might want to check with your accountant if you love him like we love ours, and see if he or she wants to be doing this all summer. My father used to say that the only things you can count on are death and taxes. He was wrong, because you and I know that the only thing that is really constant is Jesus. The only thing that is really constant is Jesus. Hebrews tells us 13:8. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday and today and forever. That bears repeating too. Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Yeah, we still have to take time to prepare and pay our taxes. And yes, our human bodies will die. The good news is this: we can choose to live forever with Jesus even after the things of this earth have passed away. No more death and no more giving Caesar his due. I'm going to be there. How about you? Meanwhile, as the Apostle Paul told us in Romans 13, verse 4, pay to all what is owed to them, taxes to whom taxes are owed, revenue to whom revenue is owed, respect to whom respect is owed, honor to whom honor is owed. And while we ponder who it is that we need to honor, ourselves or others, brothers and sisters, may the Lord watch between me and thee while we are apart one from the other. Amen. Amen.